AI is accelerating everything, but speed without judgment is just noise. So it's not about how much content we produce, but how thoughtfully we can decide what deserves to exist and be amplified. What I've learned from my conversations, it's not that we're entering a technology first era. We're entering a human recalibrated era. There's been a clear shift from people first as culture language to people first as performance strategy.
Hey, it's E.B. Moss, and this is another episode of Insider Interviews with media, marketing, and advertising pros. And one of the biggest pros is Jack Myers. Hello, Jack.
Hey, E.B., it's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you. I can't believe you're calling it an honor. You really were so formative in a lot of my media career, and you're such a media polymath. You have, I think, even a degree as a media ecologist, which you're going to have to explain to us. You're an author, you're an educator, you're a founder, and now you're even a podcaster. You've just done so much and constantly reinventing yourself that I'm honored. Let's take a page from your own podcast, Lead Human, because you ask people, tell us who you are right now. So who are you, Jack? Why are you?
Actually, the question we ask at the opening of Lead Human, who are you as a human being? I've always been human first. I've always looked at the human aspects of our business, media, marketing, advertising, and recognizing early on in my career when I was at CBS and cable was just emerging, and CBS and I didn't completely agree on how we should respond. And I just saw the reality of technological change and began tracking it and launched the Myers report.
That was the fax, right?
It started with Joe Mandisi and a fax, 1984. And the focus on technological change really focused on how with each technology that was advancing, whether it was AM to FM radio or broadcast to cable, the internet, mobile, there was generational impact. And I really started focusing in and writing books on the generational changes and looking at the next generation that was coming along. And right now I'm looking at what I call Gen Nexus, the Nexus generation, the first generation who's born post-2020 and post-AI in the realities of what, not just their lives, but the lives of all of us who are educating, mentoring, coaching, parenting, teaching this next generation, the realities of how we're going to manage them. So I've really focused on throughout my career. You say I've reinvented myself. The continuity has been the focus on technology and generational shifts and the impact on culture, society, and business.
That's a lot to unpack. But I think I understand.
It's years of unpacking myself. So yeah, I tried to do that quickly.
Okay. But I do remember, when did your book on Gen Z come out?
That was called Hooked Up, a new generation surprising take on sex, politics, and saving the world. And that was 2012.
Got it. All right. And I started working with you 2017, something in there.
I remember we ran into each other on the Upper West Side, and you told me what you were doing, and I said, let's talk. And we got together, and we spent many very productive years collaborating and working together.
Your reputation had preceded you. I still have a copy somewhere of the faxed report that you used to send around. I studied those things so much. I've always learned from you.
Amazing how many people remember that fax. It was the first fax newsletter.
Then it evolved of sorts to become Media Village, and I'm so proud to be your first managing editor with Ed Martin as editor-in-chief and Marianne Teller in the background holding down the fort and everything. I mean, that was quite a time, Jack. Tell us more about the origins of Media Village and how you came to create a tome about the industry.
So the background of Media Village is really back to the generational and technological shift, and recognizing that in the advertising industry, at the holding company level, in the media agency and brand marketer level, there was a massive shift going on, generational shift going on. While the media industry was paying more attention to the technology, the data, and certainly at the agencies and brands, they have been too. But their organizations were changing dramatically, and the nature of relationships among the brands, the agencies, and the media could see the shift coming in terms of how data and technology would impact it generationally. And there needed to be an educational tool. The media industry has never been very good at educating either itself or the brands and agencies. Always been built on relationships. So we really built Media Village, which had originally launched in the first internet bubble as a consumer site, and that's where Ed Martin and I got together. And today, Media Village is a library of thousands of articles, columns, videos, interviews. It's really the best archive of the history, the last 20, 25 years of the industry, through the eyes, ears, and voices of the leaders in the industry who have been interviewed, shared their own content. And Media Village, it's now a self-publishing platform, which you know because your content lives often at Media Village, and continues to feed itself in terms of constantly updating and upgrading the content that allows people to go in and really, you can search E.B. Moss at Media Village and find a history of your content that's been published there, along with the content from most of the major agencies, the 4As, the ARF, people like Bill Harvey continue to publish there. The ANA continues to publish thought leadership there, as well as the Myers Report, and as well as the Lead Human podcast content.
There's a through line there about the generational shifts and all the industry shifts. You've always been such a good observer of that. When I was working with you, you also started to make Media Village's value proposition one where people could build relationships and learn about the prospects that they were going to call them. But you evolved it again into a nonprofit, I think, right?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, there was good reason to make it a nonprofit. We've never accepted advertising. The economics of the industry have shifted dramatically, and that evolved with shifting from MediaVillage.com to MediaVillage.org and focusing in more on the generational shift and the diversity in the industry. So we were very early in recognizing that the industry was becoming more and more diverse, and we wanted to recognize and honor, and we created the Advancing Diversity Hall of Honors, which had a 7-year run, including major events at CES in Las Vegas.
Yes.
Not that we're supporting diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity, equality, but more importantly, we're embedding it in their organizations and evangelizing it as something that was healthy and good for the industry. And of course, more recently, that's shifted as well.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of the work we did in that context.
Yes, I agree. And it was the second podcast that I helped launch for Media Village called the Advancing Diversity Podcast, and some great interviews with that as well.
And I'll remind you, you were the first one who talked to me about podcasts. I remember the day we were walking in the upper 30s on Fifth Avenue, and you brought up this topic of podcast. I said, go for it. If you can figure
You did. You scared the hell out of me, I actually just wrote about this because it was my 10-year anniversary of
Saw that.
podcasting,
Yeah, I saw
thanks
that.
to you. And I had come from a radio rep firm that had been launching a podcast division, and I was marketing it. But because I had like this radio background and knew a little bit about this newfangled thing called podcasting, you said, go start one. And in the words of the honeymooners, I was like, humana, humana, humana.
Well,
So
y- what I'm good at is listening. And when you brought it up, it made sense. Listening and also analyzing and understanding, and then kind of looking at, all right, where's this likely to go in the future? So right now, EB, I'm really focused on how to monetize the IP. We do have extraordinary IP living under the Media Village umbrella. So we're really figuring out, especially with AI and how the value of libraries of content, how to best monetize and optimize the value for the industry of the Media Village library.
you mentioned that Lead Human, your new podcast, lives there. So let's talk about that. I'm fascinated by the fact that you, in reinventing yourself again, are doing it in the era of AI, and yet it's sort of like rails against the machine. And your podcast is about becoming more human as a leader. Jack, are you tilting at windmills? Is there a chance for us to retain our humanity?
You use the tilting at windmills, and I've referred to myself as Don Quixote many times when I was
I did not know that.
and I
Psychic.
keep the book back in my office, the original first version of Don Quixote and Man of La Mancha. So that has been a through line of my career. It's the concern that, when you're 20, 30 years in the future, even 5 years in the future, it's especially in an industry that's so quarterly focused on deliverables, it is a challenge, and the industry's for that. Today we are right on it, and the constant theme that we're hearing. Even the president of Anthropic recently gave an interview on ABC News talking about humanism and humanities are at the forefront of Anthropic's philosophy and approach to business. So I really believe that Tim Spengler and I are onto something. Tim's doing a 2009 episode masterclass on empathetic leadership, and my publishing a book, The Tao of Leadership, on empathy and in business. And so we really decided that it's time for there to be some more focus on the human aspects of leadership, and launched Lead Human with Jack Myers and Tim Spengler with the ACAST Creator Network. And there is a through line of several constant themes that are coming up from our guests that relate to how they're building a human focus into their business along with data and technology.
And you've had some great guests, so I want to talk a little bit more and pay homage to Lead Human. It started with one of my favorite pundits, aside from Jack Myers, Evan Shapiro. He's great, and you really pulled out an interesting thing. Having known Evan over the years, what I didn't know are some of the human facts about him that you pulled out right in the beginning, and we really get to know your guests. So while you're, erudite like Kevin, he's so real at the same time in your show. I appreciated that, and Aaron Walton, and
we've got Carolyn Everson, Will Ferguson from Razorfish, Adam Gerhardt from WPP Media and Mindshare. We're cutting it not just across the industry, we're reaching out. So we'll have Camille Fetter, who's one of the leading executive search firm leaders and founders. We're reaching out across multiple industries, but people who are demonstrating in their own day-to-day business realities that they're integrating humanities into the work they're doing.
I love that because, every leader needs to find their human potential. And actually, your description I'm going to read this. Says, machines obviously matter, but the competitive advantage is unleashing the human potential. Why?
Well, it's interesting. In my book, I mentioned empathy over 150 times. In 2020, when Tim did empathetic leadership, and even a year ago when I published The Tao of Leadership, empathy was hardly in the vocabulary of the industry. Today, it's almost jumped the shark as a word because it's so overused. And I think that's just reflects the reality of understanding that when technology dominates, it's the human capabilities, the human resources that are going to differentiate teams, leaders, and business success. And that is going to have quarterly impact, not just long-term impact. So that's the common thread, along with some other common threads that we're hearing from all of our guests.
And we're only at the tip of the iceberg, I think, in terms of the frustration about inauthenticity and the lack of relationships. I think it's just going to get worse. We look at how, these days the headlines are about pushing back against children having access to social media. We've lost so much of our humanity. I just read about Toy Story 5 coming out, and you and Tim are sort of like the Buzz Lightyear and the Woody, because in the new version,
which is which?
Well, I think you're interchangeable, but you're both about helping Bonnie make friends in the real world instead of spending so much time on her lily pad, aka iPad. So rail against the machine, Jack. Do it. Help us all.
I don't have to rail against the machine. The machine is railing against itself. And I think that's what we're seeing with the reaction to Instagram and the kids, the issue with kids and how they're being impacted. And it's a response and a reality that we have to start paying attention to the human aspects. Culture in business today it's no longer a soft layer, I think, which is how it's been viewed in the past. It's becoming more and more an engineered system within the organization, an operating system. For example, Dave Pensky at Publicis talked about Publicis's power of one as aligning compensation with collaboration. And Aaron Walton institutionalizes reflection at Walton Isaacson through Kaizen-style feedback loops. And Jen Rogers at Televisa Univision anchors decision-making to strategic clarity to prevent drift in organizations. So the pattern's clear. Cultures is not just what you say anymore. It's what your systems, your operating systems reward in the organization. And that's a dramatic shift that's happening right now. Yeah. And I'll add, Microsoft and Satya Nadella has built those qualities in. Arthur Sadoun at Publicis builds trust and human relationships and collaboration into the power of one. And that's showing positive business results.
That's really inspiring, because I know that Publicis was also behind a huge initiative to support employees who were suffering with cancer, for example. Now, what they did is they built an AI coach to help leaders and coworkers understand how to communicate with, how to support, how to respond to their coworkers with cancer. That's where AI can come in for good, but it matches the human and the machine, right?
Well, what I've learned from my conversations and in business today is that it's not that we're entering a technology first era. We're entering a human recalibrated era. Across every guest, there's been a clear shift from people first as culture language to people first as performance strategy.
It's great. It's terrific that we're shining a light on all of this. And I'm also guessing, Jack, if we dive a little bit into the discussion of podcasting as a medium, that you probably will never use your own synthetic voice, or Tim as a synthetic voice, to crank out episodes, will you?
Oh, but I've published books and I'm looking at recreating my voice to do the reading of my books in the future.
Oh,
So yeah, I've actually tested it and gone into a couple platforms. And considering that how early stage we are, I tell my students, I teach at the University of Arizona now, and I'll put on my, my University of Arizona hat in front
love
of our
it.
basketball team. Um, but I ask them, where do you think you are in terms of AI? They'll typically be, I'm 4, I'm 5, I'm 6, and I'm saying, well, AI itself is only 1 on a scale of 1 to 10. So if you're a 4, you're really a 0.4 in terms of where you'll be in 5 years. And I think we can actually say that the speed with which AI is developing itself now, it doesn't require humans anymore to advance the technology. I think, every day it advances, every week. Shelley Palmer does a great job in keeping
Yes.
us informed. By the way, his column launched originally at Media Village, so I'm proud of that as well. But the speed with which technology is advancing, we're going to see exponential gains in the capabilities, the resources, and the drama with which business are going to have to adapt.
In terms of business, let's talk about your podcast as a business, and let's talk about that as a platform. First of all, how are you liking embracing this world of podcasting? You seem like a natural.
Well, I understand why you launched podcasting and why you believe that. I think it's an issue of the student surpassing the teacher in
Aw.
podcasting. So I'm proud of what you've done, and you can be really proud of what you've accomplished. Podcasting as a platform, it's a home for real conversations like this. It's one of the last remaining places where you can have real human conversation,
True.
real human collaboration. And I believe that really sets it apart and will continue to set it apart as a powerful platform.
So I'm a little envious. I know that you're part of the ACAST network now. And I know that there are ads served both pre-roll and mid-roll within your show. I have not gotten to that level yet. I am still being a little bit more organic with just, underwriters supporting the show and the companion content. But I also know that those advertisers that are showing up in Lead Human or in any podcast, they're actually enjoying better conversion than almost any other medium. What do you know about advertising and podcasting these days? What have you learned in your 5 episodes in so far?
Now, as you know better than anyone, because of the work you do in the trade association that you're one of the board of director members of, I think the business realities, it's such a cluttered environment as all media is today. It's so fragmented that there has to be fallout. It's very hard to make money in podcasting today. It's become very programmatic, which I think is always dangerous, in disconnecting the messaging that's in the environment to the environment itself. And I think that's where advertising is about to undergo a huge shift. And podcasting has really been at the forefront of this shift, where sponsors connect up with the podcast host, the message, and the stories that are being told. The advertisers really want to relate. And I think in a programmatic model, I think that's not a danger, because it's the best and only economic model now. But I do think across advertising, technology is going to enable a reconnection of the media to the creative. Our goal at Lead Human is to really return to have sponsors who are really connected themselves to the Lead Human story and the guests who are appearing with on the episodes.
That makes sense. Do you think that you'll do some baked-in ads, or you and Tim voice any of those ads, or is that a different model?
We would love to be able to do that, but only when the
advertisers.
advertiser represents who we are as individuals and as a podcast.
Endemic and germane to the topic. And
That's our goal.
Yeah,
juggle.
I
But the
love it.
first thing you have to do is get the audience. It's like a non-virtuous circle where you have to have the audience. Once you have the audience, you have to be funded through Programmatic to justify and validate the opportunities, and to be able to fund an ad sales effort that brings sponsors in. It's not easy.
That's right. That's right. And with, probably, I don't know, 150 episodes or so of my show, I still don't really monetize it in that way. But the value of it is, as you said, the communication, the relationship, the conversation, and it puts us on the map, quite frankly. So we continue what Media Village helped us do, is to be out there as thought leaders, and you have to be everywhere, right? And so this is another great medium in which to do that.
And there's over at Media Village, legendsleaders.org, we have well over 100 video interviews that I did since 2020, since COVID, video interviews that are with the leaders of the industry.
Yeah. And they're great interviews. And as we talked about earlier, it becomes really good prep if you're going to be in a meeting with one of those people, because you learn what you taught me way back, Jack, that it humanizes the executives when you hear them in a conversation, and you learn about them as a person, and it builds relationships and so on and so forth. So a real service.
And the common thread through all the interviews I've done is, who is the human being? And that's why partnering with Tim has been such a positive experience, because he shares that same background in terms of the influence and impact of relationships within the organizations that he's led.
Yeah, you guys are freaking frack. You're doing a great job.
I really had tremendous respect for Tim. I knew his dad. His dad and I were good friends. Pete Spengler, who was at Clairol and Bristol Myers for many years.
And where was Tim most recently?
He started out at Western International, which merged and became Initiative, which he led, and then went to Dentsu, had a senior role there, spent a little time at iHeart, really focused in on the non-programmatic parts of it. And then, of course, he's been on his own for the past couple of years.
Yeah. I met him back in the iHeart days, I think. But speaking of other platforms, I do want to give you a minute to talk about yet another incarnation of Jack Myers as author.
Oh,
you have a spy novel out, Jack?
Kissinger.
Jack is holding up the Kissinger Conspiracy for those who are listening instead of watching.
The Kissinger Conspiracy. It's been a project that I imagined more than 20 years ago. I had done some work in the 90s with the CIA.
So wait.
Around, and met.
I have to stop you. There's a whole setup in this book that reads like it's fiction, because it's about the author talking about how he was contacted by the CIA and maybe wanted to do some cool content around what happened behind the scenes. And then it launches into the novel about, spies and stuff. Jack, I couldn't tell if that prologue was true or that was part of the novel. Discuss.
Well, the novel itself is all based on the reality of Henry Kissinger being the most influential person in foreign policy from Nixon through Obama.
Okay.
The setup, I will tell you that I can't tell you whether it's true or not.
Damn it. Come on. Oh.
I was very careful in wording. This is fiction. This is historical fiction. So I'm going to stick with that answer.
Come on, Jack. How long have we known each other? All right, I get nothing.
You talk about my reinventing, and there are a lot of through lines in my career. Everything is interconnected, but I am shifting from nonfiction to fiction. The Kissinger Conspiracy is my first. I have written a science fiction trilogy that's now with the publisher, and is designed to be a television series, a multi-episodic, multi-season science fiction series that I'm really excited about. And it started in 2006. I wrote a little book called Virtual Worlds, Rewiring Our Emotional DNA. It was about the second life and social media. And the last chapter was the first chapter of a science fiction book that I imagined and never continued. And so I decided I was going to take that original chapter and see if I could write science fiction over the last summer. And it was one book called Eidolon Aurora. It turned into a second book and then a third book that I'm really excited about. That'll be 2027.
Okay. So you're blowing my mind, Jack, because, yeah, I've known you, I've known of you for decades, but I've known you kind of well for 10 years or so. What I didn't know about you is a lot. So talk about getting to know the human behind the man. Wow. Okay. I've got a lot of reading on my list coming up. I want to just kind of bring it full circle now, back to your media origins and what you're observing now, since you are an amazing observer. What are you kind of hoping that the media industry will embrace more of or less of? And more of doesn't get to be the human part.
Yeah. Wow.
We know that that's a given.
Well, media is at an inflection point where choices are no longer strategic. They're cultural and societal, which is what we've been expecting. So if I think about what I'd love to see more and less of, I guess three things. First, more responsibility as a business, as humanities, as a business model, not just a compliance function. I think second, less addiction to speed and more commitment to discernment and understanding and listening and responding to the human aspects. AI is accelerating everything, but speed without judgment is just noise. So it's more the signals, paying more attention to the signals. It's not about how much content we produce, but how thoughtfully we can decide what deserves to exist and be amplified. And third, more, I think, ecosystem thinking and less control within the individual institutions and businesses. Brands have to be more focused on the impact and implications of their spending on the media. And, the legacy media, which I lovingly refer to as legacy media, which have been so incredibly supportive of me, are really not being supported by the brand marketers. They're more, it's the technology and the data, retail media and principal media that are driving decisions rather than that value that the content brings. So I think there's a real danger when we lose that ecosystem-wide context around what marketing really is.
And don't even get us started on investing in news properly. But that'll be for another episode, right?
Well, I would just say that I think we've got a real collapse of trust. Trust is the currency today. And in news media, we have a collapse of trust. And that collapse is an issue that I'm actually going to be writing about and talking more about, because I think given where we're seeing the media headed, and the news media especially headed right now, it's a danger to society that as a media ecologist, following the work of Marshall McLuhan and Neil Postman, there's a real concern about the impact and implications of news media.
We would all be best served by reading and listening to and watching Jack Myers on the media. So, Jack, you know that, as I said, you taught me about humanizing executives. And so taking a page from that and applying it to myself, I will leave you with singing. Changes to face the strain. I don't know if those are the right words, but changes applies, right?
Changes apply to Bowie. You could also say, come on in, the opportunities right now in our industry across all business have never been more democratized. And that's both a negative and a positive. And I think if we focus in on the human role in a technology-led world, we're all going to be much better, much healthier, and have much better futures.
Amen. Jack Myers, thank you so much for joining and just giving us a knowledge dump. It's amazing.
EB, I can't tell you, I used the word honor at the beginning, and that the fact that we can still have these conversations, we can still be thinking about the future, we can still be leading, and we can still be doing at this stage of our careers. And I'm quite a bit older than you are, EB, but I repeat how incredibly valuable our relationship has been to me.
Thank you, Jack. Well, I hope you got some good insider scoop from this episode of Insider Interviews with me, E.B. Moss. If you enjoyed this content, please feel free to buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/mossappeal. And I hope you'll follow Insider Interviews on social media. And if I can help you with your company's podcast, please find me at mossappeal.com. My theme music was composed and performed by the incomparable Grammy-winning John Clayton. Thanks again for listening.